Today, it's all about creating better black and white portraits on Behind the Shot. Hi, as always, welcome to Behind the Shot. I'm Steve Brazill, the host. This is the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots from conception to completion and all those stories and challenges that happen in between. If you ever want to reach out to me, the best bet is to find me on social media. My most favorite sites, I guess I would say, is Twitter and Instagram, and it's at Steve Brazill on Twitter or Instagram, or for the podcast, it's at Behind the Shot TV. And of course, you can hit the websites as well, stevebrazill.com or behindtheshot.tv. And for behindtheshot.tv, that's where you will find the show notes for today's episode. I've got a blurb that I've written about my guest today, a small gallery of his work so that you can kind of see what he does. And you can just go by there and browse some old episodes if you want to as well, which brings us to the guest. I want to get this guest in quick today. Toronto-based photographer, mentor, educator, speaker, Mr. Ron Clifford. How are you, sir?
Hello, I'm doing really well. I'm really glad to be here and looking forward to discussing this image particularly.
Well, and I've known your name for a long time. You're well known in the photography space. But the way that this kind of meeting happened was our mutual friend, Rick Salmon, sent me an email saying, you need to get Ron Clifford on the show. And I'm like, well, Rick Salmon said I need to get Ron Clifford on the show. Done. I need to call him. You are, when I say I've heard of you before, it's because you're well out there in the photography space, and your photography speaks for itself because what you shoot is, I think, extreme locations for me, right? I'm not going to go through the strait to get to Antarctica. Not going to happen. There's not enough Dramamine or Bonine in the world for me to do that straight. But you're nature, landscape, wildlife photographer, the Arctic, Antarctica, Africa. Does that kind of sum it up for you? How do you describe what you shoot?
Yeah. So today, when I answer people, they say, "What do you photograph?" Or you're a photographer. I say, "Yeah, I'm a portrait photographer, and I take portraits of nature and I take portraits of people." So what I try to do is reveal character and beauty in the world around me and in the people I meet.
That's a great
that basically
description.
Sums it up.
That is a great description. You take portraits of nature.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before. I like that. You've been featured by Google.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize this, but you were director of the Google Plus mentorship program for photographers?
That's right. Yeah.
I miss Google Plus.
I sure do. Boy, do I.
I shouldn't say that. I miss parts of Google Plus.
Yeah.
Right?
Google Plus really helped launch me into a more stable career. And that's when I really leaned into mentoring. And so from Google Plus, I met a number of what I would consider mentors and incredible photographers, the Trey Ratcliffes of the world. And I worked with Trey Ratcliffe on developing his mentorship platform for many years. And now I run my own private platform. But yeah, Google and that whole experience, it's a bit bittersweet, but I really owe Google a lot for launching that.
You mentioned Trey. Trey's been on the show twice.
Yeah.
Twice, 3 times, I forget. Fantastic shows, by the way. People go look up the shows with Trey Ratcliffe. The first one was this museum in France he started talking color theory, and my mind melted for a little bit. And the second one's on Burning Man shots, because really Trey's shots of Burning Man kind of define. I've never been. It kind of defines Burning Man to me. But you mentioned his mentorship program, which is Arcanum. Don Komarechka, my buddy, was involved with that as well. But it was a mentoring program. And Portrait Masters International, you're a multiple award winner, silver medals, bronze medals. Yeah. And this was the interesting one that I didn't know about until we started planning this. You were a TEDx speaker, the bipolar photographer, was that?
That's right.
The title?
Yes.
How traveling to the ends of the earth helps me cope with my diagnosis. When was that?
Yeah. So that was 2 years ago. 2 years ago this month, in fact. And that talk was given, I had a couple things on my bucket list. And for some reason on a vision board, when I first did one, I didn't believe in vision boards. And I was challenged to do one. And after a bit of kicking and screaming, I thought they were a little woo-woo and out there, And I said, okay, you know what? There was 3 or 4 of us. And I said, okay, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to do one. I'm going to kind of wrap it around how I believed they could work. And so I did one. And one of the first things on it was actually a TED talk or a TEDx talk. And I don't even know why I put it there. That was way back, maybe 2015 or 14, 13. I don't know when it was. It was 2000. Actually, it was 2014 because Antarctica was on that board, and I hadn't gone to Antarctica yet. But TEDx was on that board. Antarctica was on that board. Speaking in front of people was on that board. A home studio with these rich wooden floors was on the board. And I learned in a matter of days and months that my visions were too small.
Interesting.
So I finished that board on a weekend. And the following Monday, a friend of mine called me up and said, I need to talk to you. I'm in town. Can we get together? And his dad had just passed away. And I thought he wanted to get together and kind of go over that because I'm his lifelong friend. And I said, sure, I'll get together with you. We went out for dinner and we did talk about his dad, a very unfortunate passing from Alzheimer's. And he said, Ron, I mean, I did want to talk to you about my dad, but the real reason so I finished the board on Sunday. This was like Monday. The real reason I wanted to talk to you was I wanted to know if you'd be interested in joining a photography symposium team in Antarctica.
Wow.
In October. Yeah. And I just about fell on the floor, you know? And I said, well, of course, I don't care how it happens. The answer is yes. You know? Well, of course, I didn't understand the Drake Passage at the time.
Yeah, well, see, and now you know what I mean. I haven't seen the Drake Passage, and I'm okay with that. I will live a good life knowing the Drake Passage is there, and I'm
the fortunate thing. I say fortunate. The fortunate thing was in my first trip, we encountered 7 to 9 meter waves between two near hurricane force storms, and I'd never been seasick before then.
Well, until now, yeah.
And so, I said in my talk, I said, if I ever get a T-shirt, it's going to say, I never get seasick, but when I do, it's on the Drake Passage.
So, but how the TEDx talk come from that? I mean, I don't know how one becomes a TEDx speaker.
So locally, I thought, well, I don't even know what I'm going to talk on, but I have a story, and you know, maybe that's a story for another day, but I've overcome the debilitating effects of bipolar disorder. And I also travel to the ends of the earth. So the bipolar photographer is not just a play on words, it's a reality for me.
Right.
And I discovered that when I go to extreme places, it forces you, like the Drake Passage, to live in the moment. And although I understand intellectually the idea that you should live in the moment, you know, I can't spend too much time in the future. That causes anxiety, or too much time in the past because that can cause ruminating and depression. When I was in the moment, I was really stable. And that was remarkable. And so that when Newmarket announced that some people I knew were going to run the first Newmarket, which is, I'm just north of Toronto, the first Newmarket TEDx talk, I remember waking up in the morning and seeing this like 7 and 8 in the morning on my phone. Newmarket is having its first TEDx talk, and it's on mental health.
Wow.
Well.
So the vision board, and then literally these things line up.
These things all just went into and I'm sitting in a studio with rich wooden floors in my home that didn't exist at the time that I made the vision board.
I love that. That is
so these things, they just kind of melted into place. And it's not that I didn't work toward them. I work hard. We all work hard. We work toward these things, but I couldn't have anticipated that these opportunities would align with intention and hard work. And so it's not magical. I don't believe vision boards are magical. I believe they give us something to have faith toward. So something to direct our energy toward. And that's how
it's a roadmap.
I was able to.
It's a roadmap. It's not a prediction. It's not a guarantee. No. It's a goal board, basically.
It's goals and something to have faith to work toward. So that the effort that you have has a focused direction. Yeah.
I want to circle back on something you said photography-wise, because that line you said of, I am a portrait photographer. I take portraits of nature, right?
Yeah.
But there's a skill set difference to me. So
a huge skill set.
Wildlife, nature, landscape, not all the same things. And then studio portrait work, location portrait work, because you do actual portraits. In fact, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. My life is full of this and that. Like, this is my life. It's always
but there is a skill set difference. So
yeah.
Since you shoot all of it, how do you define to somebody looking at those genres, portrait, landscape, nature, wildlife? What is the skill set difference that people need as they switch hats between those? Is there a common thread, or are there any things that make them unique in the shooting experience?
The answer is yes to both.
Okay.
When I started in photography, I started in weddings and portraits. And weddings are great because they help you think on the fly right away. You got to solve lighting problems really fast as a wedding or event photographer. You're given, you go to a wedding event, you didn't know you're in a glass room. Now, how do you light it, right? How do you use your strobes? So that's one thing is that led to this idea that you need to know your gear. Like a lot of people say, well, the best camera you have with you is the one that you have with you, right?
Right.
And I agree to that in a pinch, but this camera is going to do me no good to photograph a lion at dusk at 100 yards.
Right. Same with
me. Moving
me.
boat.
I do vacations now with my phones. We just did a driving vacation to Seattle, and it was a struggle for me to do, but I'm just going to take my iPhone 11 Pro Max and just have fun with it. And that way I'm not the dad saying, hold on, everybody, while I kneel down and get the shot that's perfect and that I want. However, I'm a live music shooter, and I'm not going to take that in a photo pit and take any serious usable photos with it.
No. They're amazing now, but gear is important, and knowing it well, and so that you can make adjustments quickly. But the principles of photography never change. And so you understand that in the studio, motion's not usually a big issue, though it can be. And so you have more fixed setting. I tend to shoot fully manually in the studio because I can control the light.
Right.
In nature, I most often shoot in manual with auto ISO because I'm often moving between scenes, shooting in burst mode, and all my fine adjustments happen with the exposure compensation dial.
Right.
So I'm really on the fly.
Which in that case is only affecting your auto ISO.
That's right. So my ISO moves up and down because I need to know if it's a bird in flight, I want to shoot at f8, but I also want to shoot at 1/2000th of a second. So I need a variable. The only thing left is ISO.
Yeah.
For me to make rapid adjustments too.
See, it's similar to how I shoot. I shoot all my shows. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but I shoot almost all my events at 2.8 because there's so much clutter on a stage that I want that background separation. And what I tell people is that's not a curse. It's not bad that you're shooting at 2.8. If you're not used to it, get used to shooting at a wide aperture. But in reality, it makes everything easier, right? I set my shutter for the subject. If I'm shooting James Taylor sitting on a stool versus, Slipknot that's jumping in the air, okay, I'm going to change and have a different shutter speed, but I'm always at 2.8.
Yeah. So
and my ISO just goes where the general is for that night. And I can just change my shutter. You remind me kind of Rick in a way, Rick Salmon, because his saying is, "I specialize in not specializing."
Yeah, that's right.
That kind of.
His portfolio is definitely more diverse than mine. He does specialize in not specializing.
So this shot for today.
Yes.
When the way I do this, for those of you that are watching and don't know, I always want to pick a shot that I have questions on, right? Because if I don't have questions, it's going to be a short show. But I want, and you can have, by the way, great shots that there's just no questions on. It can be a magical, amazing shot that anybody would be proud of, but everybody looks at it and goes, oh, well, I know what you did, right? So whenever I pick a shot, I usually have my guest, like Ron here, send me 5 images or so that they think would work that I pick from that I like. And when we were going back and forth on the shots, when I saw this particular image, it leaped at me. There is something, it's a portrait, but there is something absolutely magical about everything going on in this shot. So let's start here. And again, I want to remind people that if you want to see this image, if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, keep in mind that you can actually go to behindtheshot.tv. There's a gallery of Ron's work there. You can go look at that. You can read a little thing that I wrote as well. And you can see the picture if you're listening to the audio version. And also, I would encourage you, this podcast is available for you in audio only form in your podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts. And it's also available wherever you get your podcasts in video form if that service supports video. So whatever it is, if you're a podcast person, you can get it audio or video. Or if your app doesn't support video, they're up on YouTube as well. So you can go there to see this shot. And with that in mind, the shot is called, correct me if I'm wrong, it's called The Baptism.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to try, I do this every time. Score me at the end if you want to, Ron, because I don't do well usually, but I'm going to give it a shot describing this for the audio people.
Okay. Yeah.
When I look at this image, when I first saw this image, I think I first saw it actually either on your website or maybe on your Instagram. The first thing that hit me was symmetry, right? Whenever I look at an image, I'm a big, like even when I judge image comps, it's always, impact is one of the biggest things to me and what causes the impact. And for this particular shot, it's all about symmetry. It is a black and white portrait of a young lady in water. Now, she is in water mid-thigh down, and above mid-thigh, she's out of the water. She's in a white dress, or at least so it would seem as it's a black and white shot. And there's little things in here I think a lot of people might miss. I think they'd subconsciously register them, but the white dress has wings. So from the elbow down to the hip is like a fabric triangle connecting to the waist, almost as though it were a wing under her arms. Long hair, but a large necklace, like the necklace even stands out against the white dress. And here's one of the little things. The necklace is like the perfect length, right? If that necklace was a little bit shorter, it would be okay. She's wearing a necklace. Here, by the length of the necklace, which I'm sure was accidental, it separates the necklace pendant from the shadows on the dress and the hair, okay? She's looking up. She's facing straight at the camera. She's dead center frame. Again, symmetry. She's looking up at about 45 degrees to the sky, and her hands are out straight, elbows straight, with her hands slightly above shoulder height, and her palms up. So you can kind of picture almost, looking at the sky, looking at the heavens type thing. But here's the thing. And this is, there's water coming off of her hands because she's in the water, as though she put her hands in the water and she lifted up the water, creating what are not exact copies. It's not like this was cloned, flipped, and put on the other side, okay? And yet, her hands managed to pull up at identical pace or direction or speed or something to where the splashes are almost symmetrical, but not enough to make it look fake. And they create actual wings, right? And this is one of my favorite parts. And this is where I really want to give you credit, is the framing. All of this is happening below mid-frame. Like the top of her head is just slightly above mid-frame. I'd probably say center frame is about under her chin. Just her head is above center frame. And the rest is all blank space, white space, as they call it, or in this case, black space. Just fantastically done. So the question would then be, how'd I do?
Yeah, I think you did a really good job. I have the liberty of having the image in front of me, but I think people that listen to the podcast are going to have a reasonable idea of what this image is going to look like when they see it.
It's heavenly, right? It's like she's looking at the heaven. She's raising her hands to God or whatever she might be thinking at the moment. But the spray of water coming off her fingertips and making this curled wing, not symmetrical, slightly bigger on frame right, but even the water droplets splatting out are just right. So let's start here. Technical stuff. Yeah. You're not going to take this same shot with these same settings, but it'll give you a baseline if you're new at photography. correct me if I'm wrong on any of this because I got it out of EXIF data.
Okay.
Nikon D750.
Yes.
With the classic portrait lens, 85 1.8. Manual mode, although you told me in the green room that you shoot auto ISO.
That's right.
Which ended up at 900, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. 85 millimeters, obviously. F2.8, even though it's a 1.8 lens and an 800th of a second. So let's start there. No flash and white balance set to auto. So let's start with the settings. You shoot manual but auto ISO.
Yes.
So that would mean that you dialed in 800th of a second f2.2.
Yes.
Why?
So I am trying to get my shutter speed. I was actually trying to get my shutter speed over 1,000, and I might have bumped it because I want to get the water drops sharp, but not pin sharp. I want some movement. I know over 1,000, they're going to start to get really sharp.
Okay.
And at say 500, they're going to be too fuzzy. There's real intention behind water movement. I spent a lot of time around water and shooting with water. And so I know that 800 to 1,000 was literally where I needed to find myself. I'm shooting on what the D70 was. Burst frame rate was what, 7 frames a second or 6 frames. It's not a lot. I wish I'd had my D5, but I didn't at the time. So that's when we're dialing in the settings. It's also what you may not have there is the exposure bias is minus 2/3. And so when I shoot in auto ISO, I use my exposure compensation to get just nail the exposure. There's lots of ways you could do it. I could have spot metered on her face, for example, or somewhere else where I wanted to get it right. But we're working with very rapidly changing conditions. It's the end of the day. There's no direct sunlight. It's overcast, and she's actually coming out of a tunnel that's an underpass for a creek.
Oh,
and there's a bit of Photoshop magic had to happen here because I couldn't completely get the background black. So my exposure, minus 2/3, allowed that white to sit perfectly without overexposing.
Wow. Okay. And first of all, let me just say this. Every time a Nikon shooter says I was using spot metering on a non-top of the line body, a slight piece of my Canon photographer body dies. Because
so just to be clear, I didn't use spot metering. I used matrix metering.
But you could have.
I could have, but I didn't.
Whereas unless on a Canon, you've got a 1D series, I've got a 5D Mark IV, and spot metering is useless because, I mean, here it wouldn't be because you'd use center point, but spot metering doesn't follow your focus point on a Canon.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm a Canon shooter. Before people attack me for digging on Canon, I'm a Canon shooter. That's my whole point here. So this is a tunnel. Okay, that brings some things into vision here then. Did you go there with this shot in mind?
So that's the interesting thing. You know, a lot of things happen when you're busy making other plans, right?
Yeah.
And so we were at this river by this place that I like to shoot conceptual work on the other side of the bridge, doing a shot. And I believe we had smoke with us, and we were doing a shot for Ophelia. And so it was a conceptual shot, and another model was modeling in the creek these Ophelia shots and kind of crossing over to fashion. At the end of the day, she actually lied in the creek with her eyes closed, and we shot from above because Ophelia in the
How'd you get up on a bridge?
Because it is a train train overpass. We just climbed up the hill where the train goes over and shot down below. And so there's a lot of shots in this session, and we were moving to the other side. We saw, because the sun was disappearing, we were losing our light, said, let's walk through the tunnel to the other side. And my daughter, who was assisting that day, had this dress-like poncho on.
This is your daughter?
This is my daughter. Yeah, this is Beth. She models frequently for me.
I can see why.
I have to pay her though.
Well,
she doesn't.
As well you should, sir. As well you should.
And I do. And she's walking through the creek, and she was splashing water. And, you know, I turned around and I said, stop right there. Like, it just stopped the world. I just saw a shot. And I said, can you splash and lift your arms up for me as you walk forward? And
okay. Let me interject here really quick. I apologize. You had the vision. You said, can you just stop and swing your arms up? At that moment, even then, Did you just see water, or did you see this type of wing type symmetry?
No, I saw the water, the splashing. I love shooting with water, models in water. And she was walking. So I just she did the splash. She might have even done it with one hand in the beginning. And I took a series of pictures. I just hammered down and I looked at it and I said, I have an idea. And I had to get her to walk out to me because I needed to push the exposure of the tunnel down and get her out
right
into the correct exposure.
So that she'd still stand. So this is daylight then.
Yeah. And an overcast day, end of the day, it's starting to get dark. The ISO is climbing. And so that's why I'm shooting at 2.2. And I don't like to shoot that lens at 1.8. It's just finicky on the autofocus at 1.8. Right. I don't know why Nikon, like both the 1.4 and the 1.8 are finicky as heck.
Well, but here's the thing. 2.2 not just helps you with her because her face is at an angle, right?
Yeah.
Because she's looking up at 45 degrees, unlike a normal portrait, her forehead and mouth might be on the same plane and her eyes might be close to the same plane. By tilting the top of her head back, her mouth and eyes and hair are all on different planes now. So that 2.2 probably helped you with that. Plus, I would argue that the water droplets, that 2.2 probably helped the water droplets look more evenly, which I've got to commend you on your water droplets here. Water is tough, right? I mean, from a specular highlight point of view, I don't care if it's overcast or not. When you're exposing for a white dress where you can't go too dark because it's going to start looking weird when you bring it back, but you're trying to save the highlights on the water droplets, right? It would be easy to clip the highlights on those water drops.
Oh yeah. Really.
And you didn't.
So. Yeah.
I mean, at all.
I was really grateful that she was wearing white that day for this shot, because I think if there was anything else, I'd really have struggled with nailing the exposure on this shot.
Let me ask this. The dress does not look as though it's pure white. Like it's bridal white, correct?
It's a cotton white. So that's natural cotton,
okay.
But it's white, but it's not bridal white. No,
it's
is
not
literally
type white.
If you were there and you switched your camera over to black and white, that's what it would look like right there.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I've increased some contrast and worked on the raw file, but
what happened in the black and white here also is the water droplets came out kind of the same color white as the dress. I shouldn't say color white. Came out the same kind of shade of white exposure wise as the dress. Yeah. So it not only accentuates the dress, the water droplets, but it really looks as though it's all one piece, that those water droplets are part of her. And I absolutely love that. And when you shot this, you knew you were going to go black and white.
Yeah, that was the intention, right? As soon as I saw it, it was right from the start. Often when I'm shooting in portrait, because I do like black and white portraits, I will switch my camera to the black and white mode in camera, even though the raw file is in color when it comes into Lightroom. Right. I want to see it in black and white in my camera.
Because your JPEG preview is black and white then.
That's right. And so I get to actually see more of what I'm trying to arrive at.
So that's a great tip actually right there for just black and white portrait photography is shoot raw so that you've got the capability, but...
Yeah, shoot raw and switch it to monochrome.
Yeah.
In your camera profile.
Monochrome, yeah.
Yeah. I do that all the time. And that helps me really envision the final product.
Well, but I guess I'm going to go deeper into the concept of black and white portraiture. How did you know that, and again, you've got the color, I get that, but in your head, you already knew that you were going to do black and white.
Yeah.
Why? In other words, let me rephrase that. You're looking at shooting a studio portrait and you know that there is an option possibly to go black and white. What is your deciding factor? What are the mental roads that you take to get to, and this could be in post-processing as well, right?
Yeah.
What are the mental roads that you personally take to say that needs to be black and white? And let's stay with, because it'd be actually a slightly different conversation on wildlife or nature, although kind of the same.
And I shoot far less black and white in nature, far, far less.
So what is your thought process when you're shooting black and white? What's your...
So my first answer to that is black and white distills an image to its essential emotional connection. Like it literally, I am a huge proponent or preacher of simplicity in imagery. Only have the number of elements that you need to make a powerful image. If you have too many elements, it takes away from the power of an image. And so this is really important in portraiture, really important. It's all photography, but portraiture, you start eliminating elements. I say the artist looks at a blank canvas and says, what can I add to this to make a powerful image? The photographer's role as an artist is the same, but opposite. He looks at everything in front of him and says, what can I take away
Right.
to make a powerful image? Because all I got is this frame right here. So 85 millimeter in this gives me the right feel of everything. And I have to be back quite a ways. I'm actually in what's those fishing waders, in this creek.
Yeah. Okay.
If she walks 2 more feet forward, she's up to her waist. It was really a challenging shot. And my camera is precariously close to the water.
Which, by the way, I should have mentioned that in the description. This isn't an eye level shot.
No.
It's also not a shooting up shot. So the camera is, again, she's water mid-thigh down and the camera is probably waist high. So it's equidistant on the lens projection above and below center line on the lens.
It doesn't shoot up like that.
Right.
I come down to the water with my camera. This is something that I will always do is I tend to shoot low.
I like what you said, though, about black and white and that it distills it down. Because one of the things I just had a gentleman on, I was telling you in the green room, retired Navy SEAL Darren McBurnett. And it's a black and white shot of Navy SEAL training. And the shot that we used, an underwater shot of people doing drowning survival training. And it's the same type of a thing. The color would have distracted, right? It distills it down to geometric shapes almost.
Yeah.
It also gives you an easier way to craft the light when you're just dealing with 256 shades of gray instead of 16 million, whatever colors. Yeah. Your composition here, though, the water has no background. So the water goes into the black. And the water has no edges. It's almost like a infinity edge pool. Love that, right? And you kind of already said how you did the camera to set that up.
Yeah.
But you did choose. Now, the picture here on the video, go look at the picture on the website at behindtheshot.tv. But the picture in the video is on a black background. So it's going to look like there's even more space. But again, mid space is right about where her chin is. What was your idea framing and composition wise on only having that much and her hands are just about at the center line and leaving that white space?
Yeah. When I looked at, as I created the composition, as she moved forward, as she put her 2 hands in and I saw this arc of the water. I remember how
when you first saw
that
had to be magical.
Well, yeah, it was. It was like every once in a while you're in a position where you just want to scream for joy that you
right.
Like I could not have planned this ahead of time. Maybe I could have. I don't think I would have. I just think elements between personal vision, my personal views on things, personal vision, the kind of shooting I was doing around water, like you may have the bodybuilder image on some of the images that I sent you.
It's probably in the gallery, yeah.
Water splashing off her. I really like that. So all these things come together when this moment literally unfolds for you. And so if your mind is already prepared and you see that moment, then it's kind of a bit of your intention and a bit of serendipity that come together to create this moment of, oh my goodness, like I have to make this image. Like the whole world has to stop. And we've got 20 minutes before the light's gone.
I like what you said when you said, I don't know if I could have done this if I tried. And then you switched and said, I don't know if I would have. And that to me is the beauty of photography, right? So many great shots come out of just either experimentation, meaning intentionally aiming into the wind, or just sheer, whoa, I didn't think that would work, right? And almost accidental. Okay, 2 questions really quick on composition. Were you aware of where the midline was as you were
Yes.
shooting?
I was aware because I wanted.
Like, was your focus point on her chin?
I probably would have locked focus as I shot through. I would have locked, and because I used back button, so I would have locked on her face.
Yes.
And then released and let her do her thing. And so this image would never work without the space above it. First of all, you have point and counterpoint, the white and the black. Like there's so many stories in this. I could go on and on and on about the deeper stories, the Jungian stories, the Christian stories. You go through this, but there's an anticipation. In the Christian story of Christ's baptism, the Spirit descended on him like a dove. Well, we've got all those elements here and the anticipation of that moment, but we've created a very dove-like stance just with the water.
Yeah.
And so we're taking these archetypal stories into an image, and we needed that space for her to look into. We needed the heavenly. We needed the unknown, the mystery that's caused by the space.
Nose room, as they call it, right?
Yeah.
You'll hear people say, and by the way, there are great reasons, folks, to break this particular rule. But generally, if somebody's doing, a profile type shot, you want them on the side of the frame where the back of their head is, and you want nose room in front of them for them to either look into, move into, whatever. There are some amazing classic imagery where somebody has the full frame behind them and they're looking at the edge of the frame, and that can be just as powerful as where are they coming from. But generally you want nose room, and it works here. But did you do multiple shots at this until you got the water wings so perfect?
What I did,
please don't
tell
me that worked first try.
Oh yeah, that was my first burst. It was perfect. No, that's not what happened at all. First, we had to get the scoop right. So I said, scoop it up. And I just kept shooting through these every time. And I said, now at first she was scooping and she was literally tipping her hands in. I don't know if you can see that. She would tip her hands in. I said, no, you gotta leave your hands flat with your arms. You gotta move out. So she would literally kind of like a chicken and move out like that, because I wanted that. That splash originates right beside her.
Right. And you can tell.
Yeah. And then it moves around her.
Well, like she's pushing, the water goes beyond. I should have mentioned this too. Those wings are huge. They go beyond her fingertips as though, like you say, she's pushing almost out.
Yeah. So she pushes out and then finishes the pose. And I said, you just keep moving through that and don't tip your hands in. And so what I did was I got that pose, got her to do that, and was trying to get the exposure right and the light right. Moving, like when I said walk forward and splash, because if she was too far back, the water disappeared in the shot.
Oh.
Like it didn't show up. So then I moved her off center. And what you need to know about this shot, for you purists, I apologize. I'm not a purist. I'm an artist. And this is a tunnel under earth, a stone tunnel, an old stone tunnel under a earth train area. And there's light behind her, and to her right, to our left, it almost looks like a moon in the original shot, but there's an opening behind her.
Oh.
And I took liberty. This was done in Lightroom to use the adjustment brush and bring the exposure to black, because I had to get rid of that. That was not a supporting element.
Well, no. And I would argue the key to this as a black and white is that there is pure black. Right. There is a lot of pure black. If that background, because there's so much of it, by the way, if that background wasn't black, I mean, 0 on the 0 to 255 scale, it wouldn't work, because that's what goes against the subtle, whites and grays that are in the dress and are in the water. But you mentioned in Lightroom using the adjustment brush to bring it down. What else would you have done to this in post?
So we got that. And I knew when I framed it, like I said, I moved her off a little bit from the circle to make sure that it was going to be easy in post. I didn't want that circle right around her head. We tried that. It didn't look good at all. We moved it, and I said, I got to get rid of the circle when I was looking at the image on the camera.
And let me mention to people really quick, I've got the image without the two of us on screen right now. And so this is the actual crop of the image that you're seeing on screen. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And then the water itself, the symmetry was imperfect. There was a bit of tilt. Her right hand to our left was a little low. And the spray on her left hand, our right, was a little sparse. And so I used a liquify tool in Photoshop to give me my symmetry. Just pushed it a little bit. Because literally, if you drew a line, her thumbs are right on the line.
Oh, no. So, yeah, it's exact.
And so that's what I did. Just use a little liquify just to pull it. Because if I tipped the image, then you could tell. Like I couldn't just tip the image because then she's in crooked water. So we have about probably a 3-degree alteration to make this just right. And then I just borrowed and flipped a few of the speckles from her right side and brought them over to her left, but in a way that you don't see any repeats at all. Like you wouldn't detect it, because if there was any repeats, your eyes would see that immediately. That's what our eyes do.
The symmetry would be too perfect. And that's what I love is I'm trying to think of how to word this. The amount, the width of each wing is almost the same, but the location of the strong water lines, the drops, completely independent, but making the same overall shape, which is what works. You mentioned a second ago the trainer image in water as well. And in fact, you have a series of those images on your Instagram and on your website.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking about that one here. And because I think this is an amazing use of black and white, and it's an amazing portrait standing on its own, regardless of, the black and white or processing. And when I first saw, I think it was the one of the personal trainer or whoever, she's doing push-ups, but it's almost like she's holding, small hand weights and doing the push-ups off of those. I have that
here too. But
and there's rain or splash going on around her. You've got a series of these wonderful black and white portraits, not portraits of nature or landscape, but portraits. What is your trick? What if you were to share one trick with people who wanted to start doing, because a lot of people still to this day that are especially new photographers think black and white is a saving grace if you've got color issues or whatever. What is a tip you could give photographers when doing black and white portraits to get better, stronger black and white portraits?
Black and white portraits is about understanding light. And you need to understand how your camera records an exposure. I would say to learn how to get good black and white images, first, I'm looking for contrast. Right? I'll even go from pure white if there's specular highlights, like a strobe off a catch light. That's literally pure white, 255, right? Look for your large shapes. Stop looking in color, look at shape and contrast. Those are your two main things, shape and contrast. And then expose for your white. Where do you want your white to land? Because that should be where you dial in your exposure. If you want your white, like in this case, to have beautiful texture and not pure white, then you have to know that. You have to know where to put that to get your best exposure.
Yeah.
And so for black and white, I'm always looking at the highlight, Like you do that with color as well, but more so when you're shooting for black and white.
Yeah, I agree. I always think of it as your exposure in and of itself is throwing a dart at a dartboard that has scoring circles for 0 to 255.
Yeah. And
you need to choose, because for what I shoot, the dynamic range is so stupid that you're going to have blown highlights. You're going to have clipped blacks, and they're both going to be in the same shot.
That's right.
So you it's the art of compromise, and you have to compromise. Where do I want the blown highlights, which in some ways to me is actually a better exercise than just trying to everybody just keep your highlights. There are times blown highlights happen, specular highlights, spotlights on a stage. You decide how much of that you want blown or how much of the blacks you want clipped, with always the understanding in the back of your head that you're going to be able to raise shadows a lot farther than you're going to be able to recover highlights. Right. With your background, and as long as you've been around photography, doing mentoring and doing speaking and doing photography and teaching. I'm curious. I ask every guest this, or at least when I remember to. Who's a photographer that people may not know, or I guess even may know? It could be somebody famous, right? But who's a photographer you think people need to go look up and follow? New, old?
Can I name two?
Sure.
I'll tell you why.
7 if you want to.
I recently did an interview for our students. John Paul Caponegro. Ebsen just did a really great video with him and his father. They're both incredible photographers and printmakers, and they believe in legacy. But John Paul Caponegro, I could listen to him all day long, and I would consider him a creative mentor. Self-described, he doesn't say he's a photographer, although he uses a camera. He calls himself an artist, and the camera's the tool. Much like myself, I'd say that, the camera's the brush, and Photoshop and Lightroom are the studio. So I'd say John Paul Caponegro because he has a lot to offer.
What
legacy
does he shoot?
of photography. So he shoots landscape, creative landscape. He's been to Antarctica. He travels around the world. He does a lot of workshops on printmaking, but his images are manipulated. They're visionary.
Okay.
They're ethereal. And I just love his language around creating work. He's a photographer philosopher.
I like that. Okay.
So, and the other one that I'm thinking of is a woman I've become known. She started in our mentorship programs, and she ran the Christa Ray scavenger hunt on Google Plus, and she's grown into her own. And that's Lori Bauer Novak. And the reason I love Lori's work is she sees the world in a unique way. She takes the ordinary and makes it extraordinary. And isn't that what we all strive for?
Yes.
She could see a puddle and make it a Monet. She has this ability to see the world differently. And she's from Chicago. And I'm going to bring her up because she's been quietly perfecting her ability to see the world in the background without fanfare, and has developed a beautiful, strong portfolio of work in that genre.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 really good picks. And I will have links for those 2 photographers in the show notes at behindtheshot.tv. So if you didn't write them down, you're driving down the road, don't start writing while you're driving. Just go to behindtheshot.tv and find the post later. So before we go, I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you. And actually, yours is pretty easy. RonClifford.com is the website. And by the way, if you watch the video for this, lower thirds are coming up under Ron as we're talking. Yeah. But if you're on the audio version, it's a little harder to see that. So it's RonClifford.com. And then social media wise, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, and one of the Instagram accounts, the Nature account, are all actually, I'm going to go back to Instagram. Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest are all just at Ron Clifford.
Yeah.
Instagram, there's 2 of them, and it's underscores between the words. So it's Ron _ Clifford or Ron _ Clifford _ portraits. Portrait. Yeah. And then Facebook, it's Ron Clifford photo. So you can pause this, back it up, play that a million times if you want to. And Ron, again, it is nice to meet you face to face. I hope that you're doing well, and thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed being here and exploring this image with you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And to everybody, don't forget, follow Ron. All the links, by the way, are just at his website too, ronclifford.com. And for this particular episode, go read what I wrote about him. I take their bio and I kind of add my own stuff to it and mix this magic sauce together and come up with a blog post. And then there is a gallery of images there that will give you a sample of Ron's work. But again, you can always go look him up on Instagram, or you can find his website and see that stuff there. I want to remind everybody about the shows I do with Don Komarechka, the critique shows. Those are only on the Behind the Shot YouTube channel, Behind the Shot on YouTube. We stream them live once a month. We usually have a guest critiquer with us, and usually it's around the early part of the month. So make sure that you check each and every one of those out. If you want to get in on the critique shows, fairly simple to do. you need a Flickr account. It can be a free account or a paid account, doesn't matter, but you do need a Flickr account. And then you also need to submit your images to the group on Flickr for Behind the Shot. And you can do that just to participate in the community as a whole. I'm not going to grab your shot and critique it if you don't want it because you just want to play in the community pool, right? So if that's the case, just submit your images, you're fine. If you want them in the pool, we choose images that we're going to critique from, tag them with a Flickr tag BTS critique. That way we can search for that, find those images, and then we do these critique shows. And it's a lot of fun. If you subscribe on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit the bell. You'll get notified each and every time that we do a live stream there or that I post a video there. So that wraps it up for this episode. Thanks again to Ron Clifford. Thanks to you for watching. If you would drop us a review or a star rating in iTunes or on YouTube, it'd be much appreciated. I'm Steve Brazill. If you need to reach me, feel free to do so on any of the social medias. And thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next show.